those that we are confronting, who are engaging in a different set of tactics, namely, in the back, a different set of tactics to accomplish the same ends, and have a different timing, but are absolutely about the same goals. Establishing Sharia worldwide and creating a political mechanism by which to rule, according to it. This is a particularly interesting document. I suspect you all are familiar with it. If you bought this book for no other reason, or if you want to download it for free for no other reason, check out the second appendix, which reprints this document in its entirety. It is the strategic plan of the Muslim Brotherhood. It was found not far from here in a secret sub-basement in Annandale, Virginia, with the archives of the Muslim Brotherhood up to that time, 2004. What does it say? And this is really, again, the distilled essence of what we're up against with respect to the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States of America. It says, we're engaged in a civilization jihadist process. What's its purpose? To destroy Western civilization from within. This is really the key phrase. With their hands and the hands of the believers. What I want to show you, essentially for the rest of my part of this program, is how they're doing that. Because if you don't understand how they're doing that, you cannot counter it. And sadly, too many in our government don't understand this at all. Specifically, the civilization jihadist piece. Not to be confused with that violent jihadist piece, which is not to say that it can't be violent. Ultimately, it is. What we've described as in the book is pre-violent jihadism. Creating the conditions, anybody in the military, shaping the battlefield to the point where violent jihad is successful. Helpfully, attached to this strategic plan, found in the basement of this home in Annandale, Virginia, was this list of 29 organizations under the heading, a list of our organizations and organizations of our friends. Are you with me? This is the Muslim Brotherhood declaring these 29 groups as their organizations and organizations of their friends. What you will find, even though this document dates to 1991, is that even today, these groups are, by and large, still the most prominent Muslim American organizations in the United States. Get that? The most prominent Muslim American organizations in the United States are Muslim Brotherhood. By not Frank Gaffney's allegation, not the findings of 4 federal judges who looked at this evidence in the course of the Holy Land Foundation trial, but according to the Muslim Brotherhood itself. Okay? These are, we're not going to go through this tonight because I think probably you get most of this, but these are examples of the kinds of civilization jihadist techniques that are being employed by the Muslim Brotherhood and its fellow Islamists inside the United States of America. For what purpose? Destroying us from within by our hands and the hands of the believers. You have in Chris Holton, one of the country's leading experts on this one, Sharia-compliant finance. We're going to talk, I know, in the course of his presentation and perhaps in your Q&A, about one of the most worrying manifestations of this civilization jihad, namely that it is now insinuating itself into our courts. The good news is there's something we think we can do about it. I'll share that with you in a moment. But let me just get to what I really wanted to share with you. These are 7 examples of Muslim Brotherhood associated individuals working at the highest levels of the United States government as we speak. I don't have time to go through all of them, but let me give you a couple. This is Huma Abedin. You may have heard of her. She is the Deputy Chief of Staff to the Secretary of State. You notice somebody mentioned that there's some lying going on about Libya. Well, Mrs. Clinton was one of those doing the lying, until actually rather recently, as a matter of fact. And I ask you, is there a chance that a person who is described here, not by me, but by the Washington Post, as one of Clinton's most trusted advisors on the Middle East, when Clinton holds meetings on the region, Abedin's advice is always sought? Do you think there's a chance that Mrs. Clinton might have gotten some of the bum dope from somebody, not only, by the way, whose father, mother, brother, and sister were put in the business of the Muslim Brotherhood's civilization jihad by this guy, Abdullah Omar Nassif, one of the top Muslim Brotherhood operatives in the world, and an Al-Qaeda financier. But Huma Abedin herself actually worked on the family publication for this organization, the Institute of Muslim Minority Affairs, for 12 years herself. How about this guy? Anybody ever heard of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation? Well, this is a smart group, so I know you have, but this is the largest, most powerful, multinational organization that most of us have never heard of. It actually runs the United Nations these days. 57 states. You may remember President Obama said he's visited all 57 states. I don't know if that is a coincidence, but there are 56 plus Palestine, they round up. And this guy is the president's, as he likes to say, the president's special envoy to the OIC. Why is this important? The OIC is the organization that has, for about 8 years now, been aggressively pursuing through various UN agencies this idea of prohibiting and criminalizing free speech if it offends them. And under the influence of Rashad Hussein and Huma Abedin and some of the other characters who will be in a moment, the Obama administration actually, since 2009, has been actively collaborating in that very purpose. And we may talk about it in Q&A a bit, but I will just suggest to you my thesis is that part of the reason for the lying about Libya was, of course, to deflect attention from the failure of the Obama administration's policies towards these guys. Partly, it was also in the service of this agenda, the OIC agenda of criminalizing and prohibiting free expression. Well, suffice it to say, this guy is a side of the Muslim Brotherhood too, but interestingly enough, the president even noted when he announced his appointment to this position that he would be very well received by the Islamic community because he was a hafiz of the Quran. Anybody know what a hafiz of the Quran is? It's a guy who's memorized every word of the book. Now, this may be an exaggeration, but my personal theory is you got to kind of be into it to do that. And by that, I don't mean just into the Quran, I mean into the whole Sharia thing, because it's the Sharia bit that really imbues this with that kind of prestige. And it's a little scary. Is this guy representing us at this very dubious organization, or is he representing that organization in our highest councils? How about this guy? This is a fellow who arguably is the single most prominent Muslim American working in and with the Obama administration at the moment. As you see here, he is an imam of the Old Dulles Area Muslim Society, the Adams Center up in my neck of the woods, one of the most radical Islamist Sharia adherent mosques in the United States. He has got some other pretty interesting ties. His father was the Grand Mufti of one of the most virulently Sharia-adherent nations in the world, Sudan. He also has this sidelight. He is the president of the group that you may remember was at the top of that list of Muslim Brotherhood organizations in the United States, the Islamic Society of North America. He also happens to be a member of the Countering Violent Extremism Working Group of the Department of Homeland Security. This was the group that recently promulgated new guidelines governing training of those who are using federal funds to counter violent extremism. And I should say, countering violent extremism is a euphemism you may not be familiar with. It's the term that we now use instead of the previous euphemism, which was terrorist, which is actually, of course, jihad. But now we're 2 steps removed from that. It's countering violent extremism, and this guy was part of the team that said, you know, from now on, if you want to use federal funds to counter violent extremism, you have to do 2 things first. You have to vet the trainer and the training material with community leaders, like Muhammad Majid. In fact, the only community leaders that are really appropriate for that kind of vetting are the kind of people that were on that list. I'm of a certain age. A few of you look like you might be too. I remember the Cold War. Anybody else? This would be kind of like having the KGB tell us what we can know about Soviet communism and Soviet operations to try to infiltrate our society and destroy us from within by our hands, which, of course, they were every bit as serious about, just not quite as rich and quite as far along as these guys. This is not an eye chart, this is just an example. If you can read it, great. If you can't, take my word for it. These are samples of the sorts of policies that the Obama administration has adopted. I would suggest to you, almost certainly, under the influence of these sorts of people. Certainly, while they have been in influential roles. And you see here an increasing alignment of our policies with those of the Muslim Brotherhood. And I can get into this with you if you'd like in Q&A, but it's a problem. This is actually now a little dated. Mohamed Morsi, of course, is the president of Egypt. The president did not, in fact, meet with him, but he was talking about doing it. What he has been doing, and is still doing to this day, is legitimating, enabling, enriching, and empowering not only Egypt now under Muslim Brotherhood control, but I believe the Muslim Brotherhood more generally, including here in the United States, witness those 7 people that I just shared with you. Let me just bring you along a little bit further. I just stole my own thunder there, speaking of thunder. This guy in the middle, you may have heard of, you certainly know the other 2 cats. Abdurrahman al-Moody, one of the top Muslim brothers in the United States for many years, thereby became one of the people that the Clinton administration turned to for fundraising and political liaison with the Muslim American community. They made him a goodwill ambassador to Muslim communities here and abroad. They made him an advisor on the Israeli-Palestinian talks. And most worrying, they gave him responsibility for selecting chaplains for the United States military and the U.S. prison system. Again, I don't know about you, but there are hardly any communities that I would less like the Islamists to be recruiting.